We are back to the Futura. No? Okay. In this video, I'm gonna compare two Epiphone Explorers, the 2008 Prophecy Futura and the 2021 Extura. They have some similarities, but they're mostly different from each other. Quick history lesson. The Prophecy series were first introduced in the beginning of 2008. They included a couple of models like the Prophecy Les Paul. The first generation had the same inlays like the Futura. Then there was the second generation that I used to own. It was actually my first guitar, and I reviewed one in blue. You can check it out in my videos. There was also the HG version and the Explorers, the Futura EX, which is the one that I'm reviewing right now, the hardtail version with the tone bridge, and there's the Floyd version that I don't think I'm gonna be a fan of. Not a fan of Floyd bridges. Then there's the EM2, which is the least known out of the Prophecies. Time to discuss what's on everybody's mind, the damn shape. Kinda looks like an assault rifle, and you might think that Epiphone had gone crazy designing something like this, but actually no. This was the original design of the first Explorer prototype from 1957. Props to Epiphone for being brave and bringing such a controversial design. There are some changes, of course. They extended the upper horn and the three-way switches under the pickguard. I found a 2017 reissue of the prototype, and if you look at the back, you see that there's a separate compartment on the back for the three-way switch. The three-way switch is front-mounted on the Prophecy, as I shall demonstrate a little bit later. Obviously they've changed the headstock, thank God for that. The last generation of the Prophecy lineup, part of the Inspired by Gibson collection, was introduced in 2020, NAMM. It featured the Jerry Cantrell Les Paul, the Prophecy Extura, the V, the HG and Les Paul in various colors. Check out my Extura video for more information on that. Starting with the similarities, both of them are part of the Prophecy series, the Futura made in 2008, the Extura 2021. They both have mahogany bodies and mahogany necks. Both have 24 jumbo frets. Originally, they both had active pickups. Of course, they are roughly the same shape, but they differ in a lot of other ways. Let's start with the differences by addressing the elephant in the room. The biggest difference in the shape, this upper horn reaching all the way to the 17th fret on the Futura. The upper horn on the Extura reaches the 21st fret, much shorter. The upper horn is obviously not as steep as on the Futura, which affects playability and the position of the playing hand a little bit. The other big difference in the shape obviously being how deep the lower horn is cut near the pickups. Not such a deep cut on the Extura. This creates an optical illusion, making the horn on the Futura looking bigger than the one on the Extura, but if I overlay them, this one is actually bigger and longer. I noticed that the bridge and tailpiece position differs in both guitars. Look how close the bridge is to the pickup ring. There is some space here, probably to compensate for the 24 frets and the neck pickup being pushed towards the bridge. A top-down view of both guitars with the necks aligned confirms my suspicion. The bridge pickup has been moved on the Futura. I wanna confirm by measuring 48mm between the pickups of the Futura. Now let's do the Extura. Yup, 41.4 on the Extura. The controls layout also differs. Here we have neck volume, bridge volume, master tone. Here it is master volume, master tone and a three-way switch. Epiphone could have installed the three-way switch instead of one of the volume pots, but they went with the classical layout of the 58 Explorer under the pickguard. No routing for the Extura. Epiphone had to move the controls because of the deeper cut of the lower horn. Look at the first pot relevant to the bridge, look at it here on the Extura. This position is still different than the 58 Explorer though. I thought they moved the volume near the bridge for easier volume swells, but no, they're actually easier on the Futura. Here's a shot from another perspective, just to give you an idea of the position of the pots, neck, horns, bridge, tailpiece, etc. The backs of these have a lot of differences. Let's start with the position of the strap button. On the Futura, the button is near the top horn. On the Extura, it's traditional right in the middle. Then there are the electronic compartments. On the Futura, it is big, it almost reaches the edge of the back here. And you don't need a compartment that big when your 3-way switch is under the pickguard. Epiphone figured that one out on the Extura and routed the electronics compartment smaller. In addition to that, they've put the 3-way switch in there, removing one of the volume pods. A small sacrifice with big benefits for production, because you see they no longer have to route for a 3-way switch under a pickguard. The switch near the pods is more comfortable to a lot of people anyway. The neck joints are quite different on both guitars. The Extura has this set-through neck construction that is supposed to give you better high fret access for the 24 frets. Surprisingly, even though they are that different, the result is the same. You have no good access to the 23rd and 24th fret. You see, it's the same here, even though it's cut that deep and it has set neck construction with a long neck tenon reaches all the way to the end of the fingerboard, you still cannot reach the 23rd and 24th fret. Strap button on the back, strap button on the horn. The back of the neck used to be satin on the Futura like the back of the headstock, but it turned to gloss in time with use. Has a thin U neck profile. The profile on the Extura is asymmetrical, you're gonna see them compared a little bit later. Both of them are made in China. The Futura was made in Daewon or Unsun, the Extura is made in Qingdao. There is a considerable difference in weight, as I shall demonstrate a little bit later. The Futura has a lot of wood cut away from it and the Extura is a little bit thicker, so it's a bit heavier. The differences in shape and the positioning of the strap buttons result in different balance in both guitars. They both have a decent balance, but they feel different from each other when playing sitting down and standing up. Now let's hear my friend who owns it playing it in a mix. That's the band, and the song is named We the Crippled. Thank you Bobs for giving me the Futura for a review. I've cleaned it up nicely for you, I've oiled the fingerboard and polished the frets. Now I'm gonna take care of the pickups and hardware with some polish. These are gonna look a little bit different when I'm done with them using the Music Nomad guitar polish. I'm pretty happy with the end result. This is a 14-year-old guitar that has seen a lot of action after all. The specs: the body is shaped similarly to the 57 prototype and it's made out of 4 pieces of mahogany with a 4-piece quilted maple top. And it looks pretty good when the light hits it. Then we have a mahogany neck, I'm not sure how many pieces, set neck construction. Dark rosewood fingerboard, 12-inch radius, 24 frets, 24.75 inch scale length. Pearloid, blade or lightning bolt or whatever you wanna call them inlays. Molded nuts and Grover non-locking tuners. These had been replaced. Originally it had EMG 8185, these are the Seymour Duncan Invader set. Pickguard, 3-way switch, neck volume, bridge volume, tone. It has the Epiphone lock tone, bridge and tailpiece locking. Unfortunately for us, we're not gonna be able to see much of the cavities because this one has an upgrade. It has been shielded with a copper foil. And a pretty good job, if I may add. It has been done by a friend of mine, some ground wires here. The neck joint and the neck tenon. Even though this looks like a short neck tenon, if you look at the back you're gonna realize how long actually it is. Anyway, if I remove the copper film, you're just gonna see some black shielding paint on both pickup cavities. The routing for the 3-way switch has been shielded by the tech as well. This is a replacement pickguard. Originally they came with a black one, I'm not sure which one I like more. The routing is pretty similar to the 58 Explorer, the cables exit through here and go to the pickups. Some more grounding. And what's funny is this little piece of wood here that seems to be glued additionally. I asked the tech if he installed it, but this seems to be original. See, Epiphone did the routing and then they realized they don't have a place to mount the pickguard. So they just glued this additional piece of wood as an afterthought and they used a longer screw for it. It looks a bit silly and amateur, but you actually need it because if you overlay the pickguard like that, you see where the hole is? If you don't screw it down there, it's gonna lift up eventually. Look at this one, barely made it as well. Let's see the rest of them. Yeah, they seem okay. This Futura has been converted from active to passive pickups, and these are the Seymour Duncan Invaders. You can see Seymour Duncan made in America, designated SH8N made in 2011. Same for the bridge pickup, SH8B standing for bridge, made in 2011, making this an Invader set. The Futura has these pretty cool knurled metal knobs that had become signature for the Prophecy series. Beautiful pearloid inserts. I think these are pretty cool, they are painted red to match the top. This is the earliest example of Epiphone lock-tone locking bridge and tailpiece that I've seen. 14 years of play and they look good, the individual saddles are still okay, Epiphone on the back, they lock on the struts through here. Metric, thumb wheel and screwdriver adjustable, same goes for the tailpiece, it is original, it's a little bit stuck in place, but still easy to use. Epiphone lock-tone, the logo is here on the side, locks using these. The Futura body shape and the quilted maple top are easy to see on pictures. What I didn't realize by looking at the pictures is that the Futura has black binding. Goes along the entire top, a bit hard to see if you turn it at a certain angle. Yeah, now it's easier. The binding stops at the neck where it continues with white, cream colored one, black side dot inlays. Seems pretty consistent and better made than the Extura. On the headstock we have the same cream binding as well. Here is a better look at the binding ending near the neck joint on the bottom side. If I turn it around, we're gonna see it ending near the neck joint again. The poly finish has cracked around the neck joint with time and near the nut. Fortunately, it is purely a cosmetic issue. This has got to be one of the darkest rosewood fingerboards that I've seen, and I am loving these inlays. I've always wanted to see them in person. I thought they were lightning bolts, but they look more like blades. They're pretty cool. Then we have molded nut, the same shape of headstock like the Extura, Grover non-locking tuners and the Epiphone pearloid logo. This is what the truss rod cavity looks like, two-way adjustable truss rod by a 4mm Allen wrench, covered by this pretty busy truss rod cover, Futura custom, and you see the font of the Prophecy. I love it. This is a typical Epiphone bell, white on the bottom, black gloss on the top, held in place by 3 screws. The nut is exactly 43mm or 1.69 inch wide, 53.5mm or 2.10 inches. Thickness at the first fret 18.8mm or 0.74 inch, pretty thin. Still thin at the 12th fret 20.6mm or 0.81 inch. The thickness of the body a little bit thinner than the Extura, 43.5mm. The Extura is 45.5 or 1.79 inch. The most comfortable to me 12-inch radius throughout the entire fingerboard. The neck is pretty slim and it has a thin U profile. Some may call it a thin D, but we're not calling it thin D because it's offensive. It's also one of the biggest differences between the Futura and the Extura. You see, the Extura has this asymmetrical slim profile, which is kind of uncomfortable to me to play. Feels weird when you pick it up, you don't realize why until you see it. The back of the Futura has a see-through finish, allowing me to count the pieces. We got 1, 2, 3 seam lines, making this a 4-piece mahogany body. We are in luck, the 9V battery compartment is not shielded with a copper film. I looked around and it got me scared a little bit. I thought there was a seam line, this being a sandwich body, but nah, it doesn't make sense to be 4 pieces and a sandwich as well. Here's a better look of the electronics compartment. This used to have the EMG pots in it, now they are Gibson. Again, pretty good job installing them and shielding the entire cavity by my friend, a professional guitar tech. I have removed the 9-volt battery box. I'm gonna show it to you. The output jack looks like this, black rectangular metal. The original strap buttons have been replaced with Ernie Ball, but look at the position of it. It's a bit weird, but this is all for better balance. The other one is here near the upper horn. I told you that these have long neck tenon, even though it doesn't look like this from the pickup cavity. It reaches all the way to the end of the fingerboard, where it's somewhere around here. This whole thing is a contact between the body and the neck, making it a long neck tenon. You don't realize how long it is looking at it from the front. There is a problem. Even though the lower horn has been cut so deep into the fingerboard, I still cannot reach the 23rd and 24th frets, making them a little bit useless. Did we really need 24 frets on these, or is it just a prophecy gimmick? There's a benefit to the lower horn being cut like this though. It helps with balance. When you're sitting down, the neck is pointing upwards. Just your typical plastic 9-volt battery box that all prophecies have, no longer necessary because the pickups on this Futura had been converted to passives. It is held in place by 4 screws in this cavity. I'm gonna show you the cover for the electronics compartment, shooting on the back, gloss on the front, 2 screws. And the compartment is considerably bigger than the one on the 58 Explorer and the Extura. Here is the Extura for comparison, much smaller. A lot of room for activities in the Extura. The neck joint moves in time and has cracked the poly finish, cosmetically of course. I don't see any major cracks topside. Wood does that over time, shrinks, expands, it moves. Originally the neck had a satin finish like the back of the headstock, but satin turns to gloss in time when it gets in contact with the palm. Back of the headstock has the Grover non-locking black tuners and the serial number that reads 2008, making this one of the first Prophecy Futuras ever made, August, and 20 is the code for the factory, Daewon or maybe unsung China. Here's a better look of the Grover tuners, also made in China, black non-locking. This part is specially for you Bobs, so you remember what kind of strings you are using. It's a bit of a weird mix. You got the GHS 10.5 to 48 set and an additional 64 gauge single string. You got 13, 17, 26, 38, 48, 64. You get rid of the 10.5. The 64 gauge fits great with the Grover. I didn't have to force it in or anything. I even looped it around to lock it from the top. I am surprised that the Futura is considerably lighter than the Extura. It felt heavier, maybe because of the balance. It weighs exactly 8 pounds, a little bit more than an HG. The Extura weighs 8.71 pounds. The balance on those is a little bit different though. You see the neck pointing upwards on the Extura. Let's hear it, tuned to drop A. I like the Seymour Duncan Invader set in the Futura. I would have probably enjoyed the EMG set as well. I wanted to do an A/B test between both guitars, but sometimes it's impossible. When I do A/B sound tests, I try to have similar conditions like the string gauge, the tuning, and most of the times I prefer the pickups to be stock, so you have some reference. Comparing the Futura in drop A with 13-65 to the Extura with 1046 in E standard would have been pointless. Do not trust tone in YouTube videos too much. These guitars might sound totally different through your setup. Having tested both the Futura and Extura, which one would I go with? It might come as a surprise for some, but I would definitely go with the Futura. It is my subjective personal opinion, but it's just more interesting than other guitars to me. Even though I didn't like the Extura, it has some QC issues, the pickups are not for me, it is okay. It is just not as unique as the Futura to me. As far as balance, playability, neck profile and overall quality is concerned, the Futura has the high ground for me. And to be even crazier, I'm gonna tell you I'm not a fan of the looks of the Extura. I prefer the inlays of the Futura. The finish as well, the tiny details like the cool Prophecy font on the truss rod cover. The older Futura just does it for me over the Extura. Even though the new Extura does a lot of things right, like the position of the three-way switch, the controls layout, I would still prefer the older Futura. Maybe 10 years ago I would have gone with the Extura, but now I'm looking for interesting, quirky guitars that are different from the others. I've had Explorers and I want something that people point at and say, look at this weird guitar, man. The weirdness combined with the great quality, balance and playability make the Futura the first Prophecy Epiphone that I actually like. I haven't yet tested the first and the last generation Les Pauls, the HG, the Vs, etc. Maybe I was too harsh on the Extura. I definitely want to try some more Prophecies to make an opinion. I guess only the Futura will tell, no?